Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about The Mandalorian Season 1, Episode 3. It's called Chapter 3, The Sin. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. And what's interesting about this one is that this is where I'd say Episode 1 should have ended. This is like, these first three are Episode 1.
In terms of the overarching narrative, I agree. But I also think this felt like a complete episode in its own right, more so than any of the other two did.
No, I'll agree with that too. But I think it gets to be that just because it has all the ending beats, almost, where it doesn't necessarily have to introduce anything.
Maybe, but I think it does introduce things and pay them off in this episode specifically. Like I'm thinking, so when he drops off the Baby Yoda and he's questioning, well, what are you going to do? It's that's the officially that's the first moment we actually see the doubt of, okay, that's why he, what his motivation is beyond just the bounty. Obviously, we were speculating that a lot before because it felt like that was the obvious thing to do. But I think this was the first time you actually see the clear conflict laid out.
Yeah, but I don't know why you'd say that it feels like the start of the story necessarily. To me, that feels like a beat that. See, I mean, we kept comparing this to a movie before, and this more than anything before makes me feel this is the end of Act 1 of a movie, because that you could condense all this down to about 40 minutes, the first three episodes. And I'm not saying they should, because the pacing of like a lot of it's actually really nice. I think episode 2 is the one where I'd cut a lot of it out to get the time down to under an hour for the whole, to get like this, the first one, and the third one all down to one episode. I'd cut a lot from the second episode, and that's your episode 1. That'd be how I do it.
I get what you're saying. When I say, oh, it feels like it's introducing that, I mean the specific, let's say, oh, we know that's where it's going because that's obviously going to be the story. And yes, that is clearly kind of Act 1 if this was a movie. I agree with that. Just in the sense of, in an episodic structure, this was the episode that actually introduced the conflict and then paid off it at the end. And then there was some other little bits, like we introduced new gadgets that are then paid off later. Things that actually feel like a well-rounded episode for me.
Yeah, no, I like this episode. Probably my favorite. It's probably my favorite of the three. I
think quite easily for me, this is my favorite. Yeah,
it's pretty good. I have two complaints. about this episode.
I am thinking of one, like really obviously. I'm intrigued to see what the second one is and if I agree or not.
Is the obvious one the flashbacks again during the smithing?
We didn't like in the last time that they showed up. I dislike them even more here, where 90% of it was the same flashback.
Yes, and I get that they're trying to do this running theme that every time he forges a new piece of armor, it's like it connects to his past, but I don't care. I hate it.
I'm with you. It's not good. I'm completely with you on this bit.
And then the second one is one you're not going to agree with me with. It's just, every so often in a Star Wars thing, there's that moment where I go, okay, this is the fan wank moment. So I'll get to that later.
I'm really into it. This better not be the jetpacks.
Of course it's the goddamn jetpacks. I hate that moment.
That's not a fan wink.
Fan wink?
You said fan wink.
I said fan wank.
Oh, I thought you were saying like, winking at the fan.
No, wanking the fans off.
Okay, fine. That's not that. That's just they have jetpacks.
Well, it wasn't that. I didn't feel it earned the moment where the rest of the Mandalorians come to his aid. Like I never really felt like it was building up to, they all gun ho around him to help him because they're together. If I have a major complaint about this episode, is that I think the scene where he goes to the Smith, as a whole, I don't like that much. Even like the beforehand when the other Mandalorians are like, hey, you've got Imperial printed metal or whatever, and it sets up this sort of conflict, and then it tries to kind of pay it off with them all showing up to help him at the end. I didn't really feel the payoff there. I didn't really feel like it was set up enough to really feel that payoff. Okay. And then on top of that, it's like, hey, look, we've got 3 Mandalorians in jetpacks, and one's got a minigun or a laser minigun, and all sorts.
Yeah. Again, Mandalorians having jetpacks is just a standard thing that our Mandalorian not having one is the outlier. Which made it feel weird. And this isn't just a Boba Fett, Jango Fett thing. This is like if you watch Rebels, there's a lot of Mandalorian stuff in that. They all have jetpacks. It's great.
Yeah, well, no, but what I'm saying is that the moment doesn't work for me because I don't feel the actual build up to the payoff. It just feels like, hey, look at all these fun things that Star Wars fans are going to like.
Fair enough. I obviously enjoyed that more than you, but I felt the build up a bit more. the idea that they were a bit confrontational, you know, downstairs, a bit jealous, maybe that he's getting all this stuff. And...
Also, I did laugh actually. See when towards the end of it, when one of the Mandalorians are flying alongside his ship as he's flying off,
and he's like, "I gotta get me one of those."
Yeah, all I could hear was Gordon from Batman Begins saying, "I got to get me one of those" when he's seen the tumbler. That's all I could hear in my head, and it's not necessarily this show's fault, but that's all I could hear in my head.
No, I'm with you on that.
I got to get me one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not really a negative point, but I can see why.
But that's my complaint out of the way, because the actual emotional core, which is something I've been asking for in the first 2 episodes, and it was obvious what it was going to be, it's not a surprise what it is, but him handing over the Baby Yoda, and then just sort of having that moment of doubt and saying, what are you going to use it for? What's this, you know, is it going to be okay? The fact that he cares, that's the moment where you're like, okay, this guy actually has a heart in there somewhere. And it doesn't even feel like a betrayal of his badass character, because the one thing he's always said when he goes to the Smith, the one good thing that comes out of those scenes is this idea that he cares about the new kids, the new sort of found children, the foundlings, as he calls them.
Yeah.
And the idea that this Baby Yoda is essentially a foundling to him is kind of the idea, that this idea that he cares about...
I saw a beautiful little piece of fan art, just like a, you know, like a 4-panel comic fan art thing of you know, him putting a little Mandalorian helmet on the Baby Yoda. I was like, oh, that's great.
Cheap pop, that's all that is. Cheap pop. And don't worry, Connor. I know you're distressed about this, but don't worry. They've confirmed that by Christmas season, Baby Yoda merchandise will be available.
No, I know, I saw that, and I'm not mad because it was always going to be. What I'm happy about in this regard is, sure, you know, people want the Baby Yoda merch, great. I'm just happy that they waited till after the reveal. Like, because that would have been so easy for them to put in the market and hype up and go, hey, look at this cute little thing, and everyone will eat it up. It's, you know, but they didn't, and I respect that a lot.
So, now the actual moment where he turns around, and immediately Werner Herzog's like, "What? No, this is not a man of your stature. You do not ask questions. You forget. Well, as soon as you've handed in the prize,
Payment, you know, you forget ever happened. That's the guild code."
And he takes it and he goes and he gets his new armor. And the funny thing is, I almost dislike his new armor a little bit because it looks too clean. And I'm sure it'll dirty up as we go, but it looks so clean that it looks almost like faker than what it did before.
No, I get that, because before it was all this hodgepodge of things like, you know, like, this will mean nothing to you really, but he got the shoulder pauldron done first. And obviously he had a different one on before, he had a makeshift one on, and it was taken off one of the shore troopers from you know, the ones that were on the beach in Rogue One. Those kind of beige troopers. It was one of those that he was wearing before. So it was this real hodgepodge, just kind of whatever he's collected that he had before. And this
plus it was dirty, uniform. It was weathered, it was old. It just had a real look to it.
No, it did. But to be fair, this is brand new.
Yeah, but it almost looked plasticky because it was brand new. You know, it almost
get that.
It looked cheaper. And I'm not really complaining. It was just an observation. It was when he does the big entrance when he walks into the bar, and everyone's looking at him like he's decked out in that rare shit, like, and he's just walking in. He's leaving. He's almost going, and did a nice little thing where they set up the Baby Yoda was playing with the knob on the gear stick or whatever it is in the ship, and you know, it's still off, and he puts it back on, and he's almost going to go, and he just can't do it. I mean, this is the thing, and this is kind of true of Star Wars in general, because even the original movies weren't really doing anything original. You know, George Lucas himself admits to all of his influences, everything he was stealing from. In many ways, Star Wars was just a Tarantino movie before Tarantino existed.
Sure.
Right? But likewise with this, like, it's not really doing anything new with its concepts, but there's something about the stoic hero who doesn't seem to care about anyone, showing a bit of a heart and wanting to protect the one innocent kid that works. It works in action movies, it works in lots of things.
No, it does. And like I say, it's not super original. It's not, and like I say, Star Wars isn't. But that's okay if it works.
So you know, he has a bit of a heist where he storms into the building where they're keeping him. And what's interesting is the scientist who wanted him alive said that he's only alive. He'd be dead if it wasn't for him. Now I took that for him to mean that Herzog was happy to kill him quicker, but the scientist was kind of stalling because he didn't want to just kill him, as opposed to he was like dying from something and he cured him.
No, I'm with you on that, because you know, we know that, you know, Herzog last you know, in the first episode when he sent him off on the quest was like, yeah, well, if he's dead, I understand how these things go. He wasn't that bothered, and then the droid in that episode was like, no, orders were pretty explicit. Dead is the way. So I absolutely think that the Doctor appealing for it to be alive, and we overhear a little snippet of conversation between them as well when he's spying on them. Is definitely the only reason that it is alive and not dead.
Yeah. So he Batman's out the scene. Doesn't kill the Doctor though. Because he kills a lot of stormtroopers on the way in. He's doing a lot of vaporizing, doing a lot of shocking, all that kind of stuff.
I wouldn't say the vaporizing happens until later.
Okay, sure.
That's the other gun.
But he also uses his needles that he got made because he had some metal left over. So the Smith made him this like one-time use kind of.
Yeah, they call them whistling birds. I think she called them.
Yeah, so he takes like 5 stormtroopers as they're all around him just by kind of.
It looked pretty
launching.
Good.
Yeah. So he's on his way out, and this is where it felt really Western because Carl Weathers comes out and is like, no, you're betraying the code, the bounty code, and all these various hodgepodge of enemies.
You have the great shot of all the fobs lighting up while they're still in the bar, and they're all like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, no, it's solid stuff. Honestly, I think this episode played really well. As much as I had some critiques about one or two things, the overall emotion of it and the action scenes mostly quite work. Like I actually really liked before the other Mandalorian showed up when he's trying to take on the entire army of bounty hunters. And he essentially is trying to protect himself because he's lying in like a cart. It's like a little mobile cart that's driven by a droid.
Little speeders, yeah.
Yeah, and he's kind of just lying in it because obviously it's just like the metal on the sides of this is maybe like a foot tall. It's not.
Yeah, it's just about covering him when he's lying down.
And he's just kind of shooting through the crates and poking his head up and shooting there. It's a nice little set piece.
And it was fun with the droid when he was like, right, drive, and the droid's like, nah, and he just points the gun at him and he's like, right, off we go.
Yeah, so it ends with him speeding off with this baby Yoda, and he gives him the little knob off the stick because he wants to play with it.
Yeah.
So I think this almost, if anything, really showed what was missing from episode 1 and 2, and it's a fault of how they're formatting this when it really feels like it is just more of either. I don't know. Maybe this should be kind of the Sherlock style, 3 90-minute episodes, because it kind of almost feels like it's fit into that.
I feel like that'd be all right. Honestly, I think 2 is the weakest one by far because 1 I think did enough to satisfy me.
Yeah, well, it had the big ending moment, so it had something. It had a beat to end on. 2 was a weird side mission that, for the most part, the only important thing really from 2 was him spending some time with the baby Yoda. That was the only real.
It was, and while I found it enjoyable to watch, and I stand by that, I agree from a overall plot narrative point, most of it you could probably cut. And if someone told me, hey, get these 3 episodes down to under an hour, or an hour or so, I think you could do it. Mostly cut in most of episode 2, to be honest with you. If you really had to do it that way.
Well, I mean, I think episodes 1 and 3 get you to about just under 70 minutes once you take out the credits, right?
Yeah.
I would cut maybe 2/3 of episode 2 and get it to just under 90 minutes. Get it to about 85 minutes as a part 1 of a 3-part miniseries or something like that.
No, I'd be down for that format. Yeah. Also, the director of this episode was Deborah Chow. She's doing all of the Kenobi series.
Okay, well, it's pretty well directed, to be fair. So
yeah,
nothing to complain about in that sense. No, I mean the direction remains one of its strongest suits actually, and how it typically looks is
that the heist sequence was kind of great. I thought when the stormtroopers are coming in after him with the lights on and stuff on the top of the guns, that was proper atmospheric.
Yeah, no, I can't really fault that too much. So I'm still on board. I still think it's good. I think it's not fitting the format they've given it though, bizarrely.
No, I can understand that entirely. I think the Sherlock format might have been the way to go with this. Because
this felt like a proper ending of a chapter of the story, as opposed to the other 2, which didn't necessarily have that. And I feel like it's funny to me that Disney are one of the first streaming services, not the first, but one of the first to stick to the weekly format of episodes, and have somehow made one of the least weekly friendly shows. They've made the most bingeable friendly show probably out of any of these services, and they're putting out weekly.
This will probably make a fantastic binge once this is done. I said that last week, but I'm sure it will.
Yes.
I want to say I was annoyed again because they in the music they did the bloody Kylo Ren theme again, and it was at the same bit. It was when he's landing on the ship. It's when he's coming down in his ship down to the planet. It does the Kylo Ren theme, and I'm like, why? Why is this here? It's like it's slowed slightly, but it's the same beats exactly, and I'm sure the composer is aware of this. So such a strange choice.
Yeah, but then League of Assassins theme played, so that must have upset you even more.
Screw you.
No. Honestly, episode 3 was pretty solid. Like I didn't know if they set up the Mandalorians coming to his aid quite as well for me at least. As someone who doesn't really know Mandalorian lore or anything like that, it just kind of felt a little bit.
As someone who does know Mandalorian lore, the family angle is a huge part. Like adoptive family as well. Like just that is like the most important thing to them, and protecting each other, regardless of whatever else happens, is kind of their biggest thing.
I just could have done a bit more setup for me, I guess. If it was anything I'd add, it would be a little bit more for that. Whether that means just cutting to these other characters maybe once or twice while he's on the other planet with Baby Yoda, just to set them up a little bit better or something like that. I don't know. I was just spitballing, but that's it. I mean, I like it sticking with him because it does give it this focus that it otherwise wouldn't have. But yeah,
I'm really intrigued to see where we go next and kind of what the next stage of the show is.
Presumably all these other characters that we know are coming are going to be other bounty hunters that are hired to go after him to get Baby Yoda back.
Some of them, yeah, because I know Ming-Na Wen is an assassin.
Yeah, and I think Carino, what's her face? Gina Carino. Yeah, I think she's like a bounty hunter, I believe, or an assassin.
That sounds plausible.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Should mention, Carl Weathers. They think he's dead. The Mandalorian thinks he's dead because he shot him and he fell off the ship.
Yeah, but they set up he had some of that metal in his chest.
Which, to be fair, they did establish that early, because I was like, that felt like he was dead, but that's a weird choice. And then he pulled it out, and I was like, oh yeah, that was there earlier. Fair enough.
It was the old. I had that pocket book or that the metal case or something in the chest pocket, and it stopped the bullet. That was basically the old trick.
No, it was, which is again something you've probably seen in a lot of westerns. Yeah. But no, absolutely. I at least appreciate that we had seen it earlier in the episode, and it wasn't just out of nowhere that he had that. That would have frustrated me a lot.
Yeah. So there you go. That is episode 3 of The Mandalorian. We will be back next week for episode 4. Let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. You can like and subscribe and ding the bell on YouTube for notifications. If you want to support us, you can do that a couple of different ways. You can do it for free by rating the podcast on Apple Podcasts, as well as sharing us out on the Twitters or Facebooks or wherever you share podcasts and videos to people. You can also of course support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. We can do so for as little as $1 per month and get some bonus like cut tangents, bonus episodes of some of the movie podcasts we do, and a few other things. So go and have a look. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?